I want to tell you about a woman who defied all odds in ancient Israel. Her name was Deborah, and she was a warrior, a prophetess, and the only female judge in the Bible. You see, Deborah's story is part of the Bible's one unified story that leads to Jesus. Deborah emerged as a leader during a dark time in Israel's history. For 20 years, the people had suffered under the oppression of Jabin, king of Canaan, and his brutal general, Sisera. This wasn't just bad luck. It was a consequence of Israel's disobedience to God. But in his mercy, God raised up Deborah as a judge and prophetess. Picture this: a woman sitting under a palm tree, dispensing wisdom and settling disputes. That was Deborah. In a patriarchal society, her rise to leadership was extraordinary. You know, it's as if God was saying, I can use anyone, regardless of gender or social status, to bring about my will. Now, let me explain how God worked through Deborah to deliver Israel. She summoned Barak, instructing him to gather 10,000 men and confront Sisera's army. But Barak, he was hesitant. He said he'd only go if Deborah went with him. Sisera's army, with its iron chariots, seemed unbeatable. But God, you see, had other plans. The torrential downpour turned the battlefield into mud, rendering those chariots useless. And in the chaos, Sisera fled, only to meet his end at the hands of Jael, another courageous woman. After the victory, Deborah and Barak sang a song of praise. This wasn't just a celebration, it was a testimony. They recounted the battle, praised Jael's bravery, and warned against complacency. Deborah's legacy, it's really about more than just one battle. It's about how God can use anyone to achieve his purposes. Her story challenges us to look beyond our perceived limitations and trust in God's power. And isn't that exactly what Jesus did when he chose his disciples? As we wrap up Deborah's story, let's remember that the Bible is one unified story that leads to Jesus. Deborah points us to a greater judge and deliverer. You see, Jesus is better than Deborah because he doesn't just lead us into temporary victory, but eternal salvation. Like Deborah, Jesus calls us to faith and obedience, inviting us to be part of God's ongoing story of redemption. And that, my friends, is the good news we find throughout Scripture.